This is the brand spanking new 2025 MacBook Air with M4. How would you know it's the new one without going into the About page and seeing that it says M4 rather than M3 last year? Well, you wouldn't unless you go for this new sky blue color, which is more of a silver-ish with a slight blue tinge to it when the light hits it just right. It's very nice, but on the outside, the design has not changed at all from last year's M3 or the previous M2 series. Same 13 and 15-inch screen sizes, and still the same 60 Hz and still IPS. Same lovely keyboard and trackpad, couple of USB-Cs, MagSafe, the headphone jack, and of course, like all MacBook Airs, it doesn't have a fan, which means it does run silently, but is also susceptible to throttling under sustained load. But we'll come to that in a second. So on the outside, nothing's changed, but on the inside, it's all changed. We've got the new M4 chip, we've got a new 12 megapixel webcam, which supports center stage, so it'll follow you around, and also desk view. Essentially, the webcam has a wider field of view now, and then it sort of crops in and moves around the frame to keep you centered. And you can combine that with portrait mode and studio lighting. You can turn on reactions. So if I put a thumbs up, it'll there you get a little bubble there. This is just being recorded with the webcam, standard audio. But if I then switch to mic mode, isolation, London Paddington doesn't quite sound so loud in the background. I'm also getting a few looks because why is this guy walking through the station holding a MacBook Air in front of him? Well, it's for you guys. So that's voice isolation, and that's standard mode. Love it. The USB-C ports, the two of them here, are now Thunderbolt 4, up from Thunderbolt 3, so they have a higher max speed. But as well as that, this, for the first time, can actually support two external monitors, as well as the screen. Previously, with the M1 and the M2, you could have one separate screen. With the M3 last year, you could have two external screens, but with this lid closed, now you can have two external screens and the laptop lid open. So 3 displays in total now. And we also now get 16 gigabytes of memory or RAM as standard. Until now, it's been just 8 gigabytes. Well, they did actually update last year's M3 about halfway through the life cycle, giving it 16 as standard. They did that across the whole range. But this is the first time we have a new MacBook Air, which comes fresh out of the box with 16 gigs, which is actually really good news because I've always maintained 8 isn't really enough, especially if you're going to hang on to this for the next 3, 4, 5, 6 years or so, and also with Apple Intelligence, which uses some memory. So now your only questions are, what color do you want to go for? Also, do you still want to spend a couple of hundred extra to double the storage to 512? I would probably say yes, again, if you're going to have this for a long time. And also, do you want the 13-inch or the 15-inch? And all that for $999, same in the UK and the US, and that's 100 less than last year's M3 started at. They had the discounted M2 series starting at this price, but they've simplified it. The M2's gone, the M3's gone, now the M4 starts at $999. So not only is this faster and better, but it's also cheaper. Apple is really trying hard to convince you to buy a new iPhone, a new iPad, a new MacBook to get their fancy new Apple Intelligence. But the fact is, the 2020 M1 MacBook Air also supports Apple Intelligence. There's anything with an M series chip on iPads or MacBooks that will support it. And while there are some nifty features like the writing tools, which can summarize and rewrite your emails and notes, particularly handy for those long voice memos you took during that meeting or presentation where you can quickly turn a wall of text into a few concise bullet points, Siri is also slightly less useless, especially now as it has ChatGPT integration. Image Playground is, well, I don't really know what this is meant for. Right now, it's not a reason to upgrade. But then it will get better with time, and it doesn't get in the way, and macOS Sequoia is still fantastic to use every day, especially with new additions like iPhone mirroring, which I use all the time. Also, hats off to Apple's engineers, because while the MacBook Air is a very nice laptop, we've got similar form factors and designs, and actually some better laptops from the Windows side. What's transformed the Mac over the last 5 years is the M series of processors, from the M1, then the M2, 3, and now the 4. The fact that Apple make the chip that goes into the laptop that runs their software, that vertical integration, means you just can't beat this level of optimization. It's telling that the M1 Air from 2020 is still so good there hasn't really been a good enough reason to upgrade. Although I think maybe now with the M2, the M3, the M4 refreshes, it's probably worth trading it in to get one of these shiny new ones. But just how much faster is it? Compared to last year's M3, we're looking at about a 20 to 22% uptick in the processor and about a 12% boost in graphics. And if we fire up Death Stranding, it's about 10% faster at Full HD and 15% faster at Quad HD. It's a reasonable gen-on-gen upgrade, but I wouldn't chuck your M2 or M3 in the bin to buy one of these. However, what you might want to do is upgrade from an M1, because it's 56% faster in single core, 70% faster in multi-core, and 73% faster in graphics. And in practice, we're actually seeing an even bigger upgrade, 87% faster in Full HD and over twice as fast at Quad HD. Playing higher-end games like Death Stranding is a pretty horrible experience on the M1, but it's lovely and smooth on the M4. My takeaway is that no, it's not worth upgrading from either the M2 or the M3, but if you're still rocking an M1 or something even older than that, then yeah, I think now's the time. How does it stack up to its rivals? Well, running on battery, which I think is a reasonable test of these thin and light laptops, versus the latest Snapdragon X Elite and also the Intel Core Ultra Series 2 chips, the M4 beats them both by a healthy margin in this Geekbench processor test. There's obviously a lot more nuance to this, but I'll save that for a proper comparison video. Stay tuned for that one. Nothing beats that new MacBook smell. The classic Mac chime as it boots up, there's no ugly stickers, you can open it up with one finger, and while of course there are some beautiful Windows rivals, you've got this Snapdragon-powered Honor MagicBook R14, the Intel-powered Asus ZenBook S14, both 120Hz OLED displays, I might add, putting the MacBook screen to shame, but out of these three, which do you think looks the best? I also know, as an everyday MacBook Pro user, that this fresh keyboard and touchpad will not stay fresh for very long. Some people never seem to have this issue, but I always find after a month or two those pesky, greasy stains start to emerge. The 13-inch Air is definitely one of the better sounding laptops you can buy with its 4-speaker system. That is until you put it next to the 6-speaker with force-cancelling woofers on its bigger 15-inch brother. Just listen to the difference. I really do like the 15. It is about 20% heavier, 300 grams or so, and it is 200 quid more expensive, but then you're getting a 10-core GPU as standard rather than 8, the speakers are significantly better, and having a good 25% more screen space really does make it feel less cramped, especially if you're not planning to hook this up to an external monitor. Also, this Starlight may just be my favorite color. You've also got silver, the new sky blue, which is kind of silver anyway, and midnight. Now, if you're thinking, should I get the Air or pay a little bit extra for the Pro? Well, since Apple dropped the starting price of the M4 Air by $100, it'll now cost you $600 more to get the base 14-inch Pro. You do get double the storage and also the same 10-core graphics as you get in the 15-inch Air. A fan, of course, so even though it's the same chip, it can sustain high performance for longer. You can spec it much higher if you need extra horsepower. You also get that bigger, brighter, sharper, faster, and more colorful mini LED screen. And then there's this nanotexture option I have here to reduce reflections and glare. You also get decently longer battery life, more ports, of course, a third USB-C, full-size SD, and an HDMI 2.1. The Pro speakers are even better. But it's thicker, it's heavier, it's at least 600 pounds more, which gets you basically the same chip unless you step it up to the M4 Pro or the Max. It's hard to justify paying 60% more. So this new M4 Air doesn't do anything drastically different, and it has the same shortcomings as the previous generations, notably the screen. I mean, it's fine, the colors are nice, it's 500 nits, and the M2 series did actually significantly upgrade the screen from the M1, but it's not changed since then. But it is a 2025 laptop that starts at £1,000, $1,000, and you're still getting a 60Hz IPS screen. Pretty much every other Windows laptop in this category at this price point will give you that smoother 120Hz and probably an OLED screen as well. So in terms of the display, I think Apple could do better here. There's also still no 5G connectivity option, which some other Windows laptops offer, although of course if you want that you could get an iPad. And also for like the third, fourth year in a row, there's been no change to battery life. It's not a problem. Apple still quote it about 18 hours, and it will easily get you through a full day. This is not a complaint about battery life. But again, with Windows laptops powered by Intel and AMD, we've seen some pretty big gains in the battery life department, and it would be nice to see Apple do something similar with the MacBook. But these are all sort of minor-ish complaints. I don't think, for my money at least, there is a better all-round laptop combining this design with the keyboard and touchpad and this form factor, the performance with the M4 paired with that battery life. For $999 and 100 quid less than that if you have a student or I think military discount. There are many things Windows PCs do better: proper gaming, customization, upgradability, better specs in some cases, especially with displays. But at the end of the day, for most of us, it's macOS and Apple's lovely and warm ecosystem that makes the MacBook Air the single most popular laptop in the world. But what do you reckon? Would you be tempted to buy a new M4 Air? Have you already got one, or you're going to give it a miss? Let me know what you make of this in the comments below, and also let me know if you've got any questions. If you enjoyed this review and want to see more of me, then a cheeky like and subscribe would be fantastic. And I'll see you next time right here on the Tech Chat.